I have a story to share about domestic violence, and October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I'm going to tell my story really plainly. I share this Christian blog because the field report was born out of domestic violence. In order to escape domestic violence, I created the field report. And the reason I created the field report was to escape my home. And the field report was my way of getting out of my house. I had to have an excuse to get out of the house because there was so much abuse at home. The abuse escalated after my marriage began in 6 months into my marriage. Back then, we were attending a Catholic church, and I went to the Catholic priest about having the marriage annulled. I was awarded an annulment because we did not, quote, consummate the marriage. My ex-husband was a child sexual abuse survivor and had violent rage episodes, and he was a rageaholic and alcoholic and drug addict. So many times when he would come back in an alcoholic rage or rageaholic or whatever was going on with him at the time, he would get violent and he would go online and get into porn sites, and he would act out his rage on me, and he would strangle me. So the strangulation was ongoing, and I finally got help. I called a domestic violence hotline in Texas, and they rerouted me to one locally here in Pennsylvania. So I finally escaped after having a fractured nose and um, cracked ribs. I had two black and blue eyes. I couldn't even see a lot of the rings under my eyes, probably as a result of that. I suffered extreme abuse. So they packed my nose on the gurney as I ran for help to a neighbor's house, and the police tackled him in the middle of the street. He was arrested, and that started the beginning of my road to freedom. My road to freedom took me different places. I met so many nice people, people who fixed my car at no cost, no expense to me. $700 to fix my engine at the cost of a church that I never attended. And I could go on about stories about miracles that happened in the course of this. So I made my trip. My trek was really from one apartment to another. He kept showing up, and he kept getting arrested, or he kept getting removed from the property from the landlords. He was specifically told he was not allowed on the property because of the extent of the abuse. I got a PFA, and especially after all the injuries I incurred. And I share this story because I eventually had to move 1,000 miles away because he kept showing up at my doorstep, and he showed up in Missouri, and I had to move again back to Pennsylvania. So we finally got divorced in 2015. The last I heard of him was on our way to the airport where I dropped him off, where he went back to New York. He got remarried, and that was the end of the story. The end of the story really wasn't the end of seeing him, it was the recovery part. I was having problems coping with just a lot of things, like even going online, talking, communicating. I have a hard time with rejection. A lot of times, just issues that come up from time to time, I get triggered. So I go to counseling still today to deal with the coping skills that I have adapted to when I was married. I coped the best way I could with the severe strangulation problems. I still have problems. I still suffer somewhat, not extensively, but I still recover from the trauma of abuse. So I hope and pray that you keep me in your prayers as I still recover from the trauma of domestic violence. But the best thing about recovery about domestic violence is the help that I've received. I do a lot of creative things. That's why I encourage people to do projects. It gets you through the rough times. You know what I mean? It's encouraging. That's something I learned in the shelters is that one-on-one therapy and group therapy has been very beneficial. And I wanted to share this story about this because it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and to me, this is a very special time. Today is Unity Monday, where we light a candle for all the domestic violence victims that are still suffering in domestic violence that haven't escaped. So please remember, whenever you light a candle or you have a battery operated candle, for those who are suffering in domestic violence. Thank you for listening, and God bless.